Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial Group, Ride Investments, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights 7 to 9 Eastern on Jethro FM.
We're happy you could join us on National Mac and Cheese Day. I was trying to think of a theme based around that. I'm thinking maybe what sides you would choose if you were going to like a barbecue restaurant, because mac and cheese is one of the sides. So we might ask our first guest, Zach Linfield. We got a good show going here. We've got some good guests. We've got MLB keeping us on track here. He was true to his name yesterday because he went to the game, and so he might have some input for us there. Mom's in studio hanging out, and Rex is working on the comms as usual. He's rappelling from the roof, I think. I can't see him right now. So, but yeah, we'll get started here with Zach. We're excited to have him on the show. He's a busy guy. We try to have him on when he's got a little bit of a break, so we're happy he can give us some time. And I guess he's headed into the All-Star break too. So did you make the All-Star team here, Zach?
No, they didn't choose me during my rookie year, unfortunately. I thought I put up decent enough numbers, but we'll get them next year.
You deserved it. Sometimes it's harder when you're a rookie. So they don't see the whole.
I anticipate that when we come back to Comerica Park, hopefully in 2035, when we get our second All-Star game at the park, that maybe I'll be chosen then.
Well, hopefully a few times before then too. But that's a good goal. It's always best to do it in your home ballpark. Anyways, that's fun. And there were so many Tigers that were chosen this year that I wouldn't have been surprised at all. We were Mike and I, my producer here, we were talking a little bit about the history of the public address announcers at Comerica and everything, and he was talking about how he knew Jay Allen and was talking about him a little bit, one of your predecessors. And then I saw that you were also with one of your predecessors here for a recent game and got to do a little bit of a throwback.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was pretty cool because Bob Virgils, that was like the voice that I grew up trying to emulate, just like I said on Twitter, X, whatever app you want to call it now. And it'll always be Twitter to me. But, Bob Virgils was called in to do the starting lineups for both Seattle and the Tigers all three games throughout the series. And I've met him before, but it was just kind of funny that, like, I kind of found out that he was going to be doing that through Facebook because him and I are Facebook friends. And I am never on that app. But when he posted that, I just messaged him and said, hey, like, I'm more than happy to go out of my seat for a few days. I can't wait for the opportunity to see you again. And the only message that I had ever sent him was back in 2020 when I had just kind of told him, like, hey, like, you're kind of an idol to me. Grew up going to games at Comerica Park, and you're a big reason why I got into announcing. And he sent me a text from that message. So it was just kind of fun to reminisce on the time that really not all that long ago when I was early on in my college career that I sent him that message, and he got back to me within like 20 minutes of me sending that message. And then to share a spot with him this past weekend was pretty darn cool.
Yeah, that's a cool story, too, because say what you will about social media, and it can get kind of bad at times, kind of toxic at times, but it is nice to be able to connect in that way. I've done the same thing for the show. I've found show guests and things like that through Facebook and different platforms, and it's a fun way to be able to find that common ground and that connection. So that's cool that you were able to do that with him and have that callback and have that history. It looked like he had a good time too.
Yeah, man, he was pumped up. I mean, as soon as he got done announcing the Tigers lineups, like, you could tell it meant something to him. And I mean, why wouldn't it? He spent all those years in the booth, and it's the same exact feeling I have every time I finish announcing the Tigers lineup. Like, you go through 1 through 9, and then you announce the starting pitcher, and there's all that anticipation of who the starting pitcher is, especially on Friday night when he got to announce Tarek's name as the pitcher on Friday night. And, he was psyched, as he should be, right? And it's the coolest job in the world, at least in my eyes.
Well, exactly. And I mean, even if you're that's a good job, even if it's a team that's maybe struggling a little bit or whatever. But there's clearly a lot of juice in that building because this team is far from struggling, and you can tell there's a lot of energy in the building as a whole. Like even with the broadcasts, I haven't been to the park yet this year, but you can tell even on the broadcast there's a lot of juice and there's a lot of energy there, and that has to be fun to feed off of as the PA announcer.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I didn't really understand it at first, particularly last year when the Tigers kind of started that run, and it was right around this time a year ago where they started that magical run to the playoffs, and I didn't really understand like what I should do pacing wise to really ramp up a crowd until playoff time rolled around, because I had really just done it for small crowds at like University of Michigan events, and which are much bigger than the crowds that I would announce games for my high school at. But even then, you go and sit in Comerica Park's booth, and then you're in front of 45,000 people, and you're like, you know what, I can put a little more pause and a little more emphasis into what I'm saying, especially on a night where, like, Tarek Scooble's pitching. You really get into it, and then you hear the crowd cheer, and then you're like, they probably can't even really hear me at this point because the crowd is so darn loud. And then you just let it rip, and sometimes you're like, yeah, you know what, they're cheering for me, but obviously they're cheering for the player that's about to take the field. But at the same time, like, you're just an extra head in the crowd that just has a much bigger microphone.
Well, and you do provide a good service, and it is an important thing there. I do think that there is some interaction with that broadcast, with that announcement, and I think the crowd does get pumped up. Sometimes they're just in their own heads and they're screaming, depending on where they're at. But I'm curious about what some of those kind of tricks that you use, because we've had several play-by-play folks on the show here, and we talk shop sometimes and some of the nuances, because it's a very intriguing thing to me, because although I think sometimes you guys go too unnamed, you're too anonymous in your roles, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to facilitate the game, but that's a major function that everybody is interacting with, whether it's a play-by-play guy that's on the radio or on TV, or whether it's a public address announcer like you. There's a lot of different roles that are important, and I don't like when those go nameless and faceless. That's why we have a lot of those folks on the show, including beat writers and things, where you don't necessarily look at that top byline there and see who's doing it. So I'm curious what you've kind of picked up with those big crowds, with that energy, and what you kind of do. You said some of the emphasis and stuff, but letting things sit a little bit and then emphasizing other things.
Yeah, the funniest thing about it is the easy part is when the crowds are ramped up, because you don't really have to expel all of your energy when the crowds are ramped up. Like, yeah, it's fun to say, let's just say it will be fun to say Tarek Scooble's name eventually when he starts a World Series game for us, right? Like, the crowd won't need me to yell into the microphone that he's going to be the starting pitcher for the day. The real, like, nuanced part of it that's really like a niche part of being an announcer, particularly behind a public address mic, is when the team's getting beat. So like Friday and Saturday night, when let's be real, they didn't play well this past weekend. It's very hard that when the crowd is still there, especially on Friday night when there was a post-game concert, there were a lot of faces that don't typically come to a ballpark on a Friday night, because usually you're there for the fireworks in the baseball. But this past Friday night, a lot of people were there because it was a baseball game and a country concert. So how do you still be energetic yet not treat it like you're announcing the starting lineup for the Pistons during the NBA Finals? So like you have to dial it back, but you also have to make sure, like, you still are the announcer for the Tigers. You don't really take anything off or put anything on to when the Mariners are coming up to bat, but you're allowed to dial it back, and you're there just to be conversational at that point when you're down. Unfortunately, it was 9 runs at the time, but you're still a hometown announcer. You just don't go full blast. You don't give it your 100%. But like I said, man, the big crowds are fun, and they're really easy as long as you've got your full voice behind you. But it's when they're down big that's kind of the difficult part.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Pistons announcer, because I feel like if you think of that role, that public address announcer role, that I feel like John Mason would be one of the ones that you think about in the Detroit market, because he's been there for so long and he has this particular style. But from what I've seen, I've been to a lot of live games. I haven't always heard his introductions, but what I've seen, he doesn't really have like a notch down. He's always on 11. He doesn't really have like a low one. He's always doing the longer, more forceful stuff, and that's his style, and everybody's gotten used to it. But I wonder how he would kind of handle that question, because he seems to be high energy all the time, but you got to play to what your style is.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the funny thing too is when I go to games, like, I like to be there early. My dad and I, when we would go to Tiger games, or we would go to Michigan football games in particular, excuse me, and we always go and we'd watch warm-ups, and we'd just go for all the theatrics before the games, and we get to see the entire show. Like, it's like you're watching an entire movie while you're there at the park or at the stadium or the arena. And a lot of people that go to Pistons games, they don't necessarily show up an hour before game time. So I've actually taken a lot of what Mason does and apply that to being conversational throughout the game. So this past weekend, our wonderful host, Kara Wolfbauer, she was not there. She was at a wedding. So I had double duty. I had to wear two different hats. I had to be the PA man, and I also had to be the host from inside the PA booth. So they don't necessarily want Mr. Announcer guy to do the hosting stuff. So I had to be very conversational. And the perfect example is when Mason does the NBA Code of Conduct read like 30 minutes before the game starts. It was a little closer to tip off in the playoffs just because they knew how rowdy that crowd was going to be at LCA. But he is one of the best at being conversational throughout his pregame reads. And I mean, really only someone with an ear of an announcer or something of the like would really pick up on that. But he is elite at doing that.
Oh, yeah. I had to imagine, as I was asking you that question, that there's got to be some nuance even within his amped up approach, because you got to be able to, like you said, switch hats and go into those different roles, because as you know, and as you're trying to do here and make your way through this whole journey, you want to eventually be a play-by-play guy, and so you want to wear those different hats so that you get the different experience and you don't get put in a box. There's nothing wrong with doing that full time if that's what you wanted to do, but obviously you have career aspirations, so you want to show that there's some versatility there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the variance in your voice and the energy that you put forth into it, because, I mean, let's think about it. If you were the PA guy and you were the play-by-play guy, like you were able to do it for different sports or the same team, let's just say. If the Tigers are down 9 runs, my PA voice is going to be very dialed back. We're going to be as conversational as possible. That way the people at the park are still having a good time, and they don't have to be ambushed with me throwing my 100% at them while the team is down. They're like, okay, Mr. Announcer, like, we get it. But it's the same with the play-by-play guy. If our team is down 9 runs, the Tigers are down 9 runs, or hopefully someday I'll get to do Michigan football or the Lions. And if they're down, let's hope they're not, 35, 40 points, like, I'm going to be a lot more conversational, and I'm not going to be as 3rd down and 2 big play Dan Miller because he's so darn good at what he does. You're going to be a lot more laid back, conversational. You're just talking to the faceless people that are actually listening to you on the radio. And at this point, you're just kind of having a conversation like your buddies. So there's a lot of nuance to it that, I mean, just a lot of people don't understand. And then you kind of grow into it. Like, I wouldn't have understood it when I was little, and now I understand it a lot more. Like, hey, we don't necessarily want to hear you give us the best growl you possibly can in your voice if we're down by 12 runs in the 9th and a position player is pitching.
Well, and you've had the luxury of being able to watch two great ones at that with Benetti and Dickerson, and I want to talk about them a little bit and that nuance that you're talking about, because I think that's an interesting conversation to go into. But we'll take a quick break and we'll come back with Zach Linfield. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. We're coming back here with Zach Linfield. We were having an interesting conversation with him here because I am one of the people that likes listening to the actual broadcast, and I'm interested in a lot of the nuances that you're talking about. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, especially with, I tend to watch the TV broadcast, so I see more of Benetti. I obviously see Dickerson when he's in there covering for Benetti on Saturdays typically, but I do see that difference. It's interesting to watch Benetti specifically navigate the different scenarios. So when he's with Dirks, he's a little bit different. When he's with Petrie, he's a little bit different. When they're up, he's a little bit different. When they're down, he's a little bit different. And I'm now very sensitive, I think, to the differences that he has, because then sometimes I'll be like, is he in a little bit of a mood today, or is this just something? This is a bit that he's playing up a little bit, and it is interesting to watch. So it has to be interesting to see the things behind the scenes. I know you had experience with that last year, and now you're obviously part of the team and working with these folks every day.
Yeah, the funny thing too with Benetti is that, I mean, we all know that he is so elite at his job, and I think a lot of people, particularly on social media, which you said earlier, which is 100% accurate, can maybe be a little too aggressive on social media, and sometimes it just can be a not very pleasant place. And I mean, he only gets trash sometimes because it can be treated like a podcast, like a talk show, which I think it 100% should be. And I think that's why it's so entertaining. And I think at this point, if, like you said, Ryan, you watch all the games, you'd agree that, like, we're learning. Like, I know the game. I mean, at least I'd say better than most people. And yet I feel like every time that I watch when the Tigers are on the road, I'm learning something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about baseball. And it's not just Benetti. Like, it's Petrie, it's Dirks, Carlos Pena when he was doing Tigers games on FanDuel, when the Tigers were in Kansas City, I'm pretty sure it was. We learned so much from all three of those guys, plus Benetti, plus Dan Dickerson. Throw it back to Jim Price, who, like, when I announce the third batter in the Tigers lineup every time, like, I give him the batting third. It's just, you learn so many things from all of these guys, and I think that can kind of slide under the radar versus were his big calls good or were his big calls bad. And I think one thing we can all agree on right now is that Dan Dickerson and Jason Benetti are, I mean, bar none, they're the best duo of TV and radio in the entire league. And I like to listen and I like to watch a lot of baseball because it's on all the time now. And I have not heard a more elite duo in all of baseball. Like, we are so darn blessed in the city of Detroit with all of the broadcasters that we've always had. But I mean, back to the main point here is that Benetti himself is so fantastic at these nuances. When the Tigers are down, like, he feels the pain. Like, he said it yesterday in the ball game that the Tigers might not be able to win at the same clip that they did in the first half if they don't bolster the bullpen. Like, he even sounded kind of tired of the bullpen, and these are our guys, the Tigers. As a fan myself, I'm going to throw out the we or the our because that's just how we talk as sports fans. Like, the bullpen could probably use some help. We love the guys that we have. But could it always get better? Yes. I'm not going to go into Scott Harris's office and say, like, hey, you need to go trade for these guys because I love the guys that we have. But, I mean, like, you could tell in the broadcast yesterday, because I had the day off from the game, that he wasn't very impressed with the way that those guys are pitching. Like, Tommy Kahnle's gone out there twice and hasn't picked up an out, and he's allowed 6 runs. That's not Tommy Kahnle. So, like, it's a rut, and all teams go through a rut. You play 162 games for a reason, and that's why baseball is such a beautiful game. So he is there. He ebbs and flows with the broadcasting, with the game, and I think his highs and lows are just as good as anybody.
Oh, I totally agree, and I'm sure we're going to sound like homers saying that those two are the best pair, but I'd be willing to say, okay, give us a better pair of TV and radio broadcasters, because I thought it was a real big get Benetti, especially after the previous situation. And especially,
it was shocking when it came across my timeline. I was like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I was very surprised that he would even be available. I think some of that maybe is the whole doing the weekly game on Saturday. And that's what I've heard from people in the business anyways. But I mean, shoot, you put up with that, especially if you're putting Dan Dickerson on TV and then Greg Gagne in the radio booth. That's not a bad situation. Greg's a friend of the show. We talked to him on the show. He's a great announcer as well. And so you guys have a good team, including yourself overall. So you got a lot of folks that can do a lot of different things. And that is clearly a place of emphasis. And I remember Benetti bringing this up on a broadcast one time. I think that's one thing that he's noticed that he was a little surprised with, that how passionate the Tigers fans are and how passionate they are about the broadcasting element, maybe more so than other markets, because he's in a lot of markets. Yeah, exactly. So and you must see that too from your position.
Yeah, I mean, they care about the in-game experience. Like, just from a public address standpoint, where I am a part of just an incredible freaking team up in the booth. The control room is about as elite as it can probably get. I've been to a lot of different ballparks, and I mean, pretty much all of the ones that I've been to have done a really good job. But just from what I can see and everything that they put into it, from my director, the president of fan experience, like, there's a lot of thought that goes through this, and a lot of people will never even come close to realizing like how much work probably is flooded into putting together a show for the people. It's not just a ball game. Like, this is supposed to be an experience for everybody. And like, I'm still learning day by day, particularly on the play-by-play side of things, and public addresses has come along just because I've done that a little bit longer than everything else. But like, back to Benetti, he's able to turn the on and off switch like in the blink of an eye, in the snap of a finger, because he does the game Friday night. Well, he not this past Friday night because we were on Apple, but then he goes to Houston. He calls a walk-off for the Astros, and then he comes back and does the game at 1:10 on a Sunday. Like that, how can you not admire the effort, the energy, the tireless work that guy puts in just to go sit there in Detroit and leave his hometown team and his city to come and represent the Tigers? So like that's why I admire him so much, and I aim to be a person like him, not just a broadcaster, but a person with a tireless work ethic that represents the city of Detroit in the best way possible.
Oh, I totally agree. And this has become like a tribute to Jason Benetti somehow. but it is worth saying, because I think he is a little underrated, and all those things that you're talking about. He's clearly a good teammate, because that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you, because obviously I know you through the show. I know Greg Gagne through my show, and I hear those names along with a lot of the behind the scenes names on the broadcast a ton. Like on the main broadcast, I hear your name a good amount, and he's doing that very intentionally, just like when he refers to Double-A Erie as the fighting Greg Gagne's or whatever. He's doing that intentionally to make sure to be a teammate to the other folks in the system here.
Yeah, it's like a roll credits, right? It's like the end of a movie when when you just see everyone that was like involved, and he does such a good job. And I mean, I could never hear if I'm actually verbally included in the broadcast, which, like, if I am, hey, that's pretty cool. But at the end of the day, if I get games off, or the Tigers are simply just on the road, and he mentions their director, producer, like cameraman, it is a Jason Benetti tribute that we're throwing out there right now. But I mean, give flowers, and flowers are deserved, right? So, well, yeah, it's perfect. I think the way that he does things and represents other people as well, and not just himself. He is the last person to be me. And how can you not appreciate that?
And it's a compliment to the team as a whole, because like I said, it's about all of you guys, and it's all a unit. There's the folks behind the scenes, like you're talking about, that don't get seen and are talking into his headset, and he highlights that. But yeah, you're an important piece of the process. You've talked about a lot of the other pieces, but the Detroit clearly has an emphasis on hiring for this side of things. They want to make sure they get quality folks in those roles, and I do think that you guys collectively improve the in-game and on TV, on radio experience. So no, it was a fun conversation. I'm glad we bounced around and talked about all of those things. I didn't get a chance to ask you, so when I give you a chance to plug here, I want to make sure, did you actually do USFL this season? Because that looked like an exciting season, but did you get a chance to do that much? And then tell the people where they can follow you here.
Yeah, I got the chance to do the majority of home games, and the first game, which was on the road before the Tigers kicked off their season. The schedule, it didn't work out. It didn't hold hands as perfectly as I thought it could be. The Tigers had an early onslaught of home games, so I didn't get to travel with the team, but we're planning on ramping it up next year. Obviously, the Panthers had a pretty darn good year, ended up losing the championship game via the way of blowout, but that's why you play again next year. So definitely looking forward to that. Again, appreciate you having me on, Ryan, but people can find me at Zach Linfield on all socials, and it's ZACH. My parents decided to make me unique.
yeah. The HK has to be a little confusing, because
well, my roommate is Zach with the K, so you can imagine how mail goes around our new spot.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. We appreciate you coming on, and we'll look forward to you coming back on when time permits here.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Hopefully, we'll be talking playoffs then.
That would be great. Yeah, I'm excited for what you're going to see here as the season goes on here. But we should have some fun baseball down the stretch here in the second half ish. So we're looking forward to it, and we'll make sure to check you out at the ballpark. And we appreciate you coming on.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Zach. Take care. Thanks to Zach Linfield. Appreciate him coming on. Always an interesting conversation with him. He's clearly going places here. We're going to actually switch Zachs here. We're going to go with Zach Traven and Carlo Mario of Hockeytown Rundown. We're going to talk a little bit more Red Wings after our Red Wings review, which was a tough one for me to say all of last week. I pulled it off once, but I'm not going to say it a lot today. But we're going to have those guys on after the break and talk some puck and get their assessment of the offseason here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on 94.9 FM in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 98.9 FM in Plainwell, Michigan, 99.5 FM in Lowell, Michigan, 105.1 FM in Kalamazoo, Michigan, 980 AM in Otsego, Michigan, and worldwide on Jethro.fm. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh, executive producer, Deb Kay, producer, Rex. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.